All right, everybody, welcome to the Product Spotlight. I am Dave Cooper Live. The upfront investment of time and resources in the design process is often referenced as a developer, owner, investor issue when considering offsite construction, specifically modular or volumetric construction. But when all the same questions need to be answered, all the same products need to be sourced and procured, when the cost needs to be real, to be right, and the schedule needs to be certain, shouldn't one design into the modular technology first? And then again, the dividends of going far and fast next. Early education, expert knowledge of the process, and full commitment of team members are the foundation to a successful modular development. So today we are going to welcome Nick Gomez, Principal Director of Modular Design and Construction at AO, a full-service architectural master planning and design firm specializing in retail, residential, and mixed-use projects. Working with offsite construction experts like Gertie and Modular, ProSec Construction, Nashua, and Prefab Logic, learn how leaning into the modular technology leads to award-winning projects and a strong foundation for future growth. Before we do all of this, though, we got to thank our sponsors for allowing us to advance the construction conversation and help us to build it better. So a big shout out to Forward Solutions Group for allowing us to deliver these examples of construction innovation. Forward Solutions Group is successfully driving companies to succeed where others have failed. Reach out to Ben at forwardsolutionsgroup.com. That's right, Ben Hershey. Everybody knows Ben. Howick Ltd is another awesome sponsor, and they have a long history of innovation in cold form steel manufacturing and produces innovative precision roll forming technology for customers throughout the U.S. and the world. Check out their machine buyer's guide for offsite modular construction or fast build construction with light steel for framing. You can visit them at howickltd.com. So again, a big shout out to Forward Solutions Group and Howick Ltd for bringing us all of this innovation and these awesome conversation. So without further ado, let's hop on in with Mr. Nick Gomez. Hey, Nick, how you doing today?
Hey, Dave. Great. Glad to be on. And thanks for the work you do here in the offsite construction field. I think the best way to grow the field is to educate people, and that's kind of what you do here. So thank you for your work.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and you're welcome. We're having a lot of fun doing it. I really need to thank all of you for putting up with me and coming on the show to talk about what we do, because without the collaboration and folks like yourself, Nick, that are willing to share their knowledge and help grow this industry, the show wouldn't get very far. So it's the people that we have on the show that make the difference. All right, Nick. Before we get into it, though, we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, or we will call one of your family members and we will have them on the show, and it would be quite embarrassing, I am sure. Outside of that, Nick, you only have 2 minutes to do it. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, let's see if I can do it in two. Born and raised in the Bay Area. A little bit of a picky eater. Now they call us foodies, but that's just because I was raised by two awesome cooks, my mother and my grandmother. And that's just not my opinion. It's any friend I ever invited over to family parties. Early age, got into drawing and reading a lot. And that really was nurtured by people in the family and outside the family. And that helped to guide me towards art. And art led me to photography. Photography led me to design, and design led to architecture. Graduated from the California College of Arts and Crafts. I decided to go to an art school to study architecture. They did have an awesome program, but I was thinking I'd do art and architecture, but architecture is very demanding, so it was mainly architecture. After graduating, was fortunate to work for a company in the Bay Area that did affordable housing. Spent a decade doing that. Really enjoy working on affordable housing projects and supportive housing projects. I call it feel good architecture. After that, spent 8 years working at another firm where I developed my knowledge and background in offsite construction, and I was fortunate to be able to work with companies in China, Germany, throughout the United States and Canada, and touched all kinds of typologies of offsite construction: volumetric modular wood, steel, volumetric modular, panelized systems, CLT mass timber, 3D printing, you name it. Was able to learn that. And yeah, now I'm at AO as the director of modular design and construction and continually deliver projects.
All right. So which is your favorite modular? Is it steel? Is it using just panels? Is it wood volumetric building? Do you have a favorite that you like to design and work with, or are they all kind of cool to you?
They're all cool, but I like volumetric modular because you kind of get to do the most in the factory, right? And it
Yeah.
goes up a lot faster in the field. So, and the job sites tend to be a lot cleaner because there's less work going on in the mods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do we start with this today, Nick? One of the things that, we were talking a little bit offline before the show is, starting with the end in mind and the team of people that you have in place. And then there's, the pre-design process. If I'm like, let's just say I'm a developer. I do a ton of projects, right? And I want to use AO because I'm thinking of switching to modular design. Where would I start with you guys? And walk me through what your process is on how to do this.
Yeah, so we like to start with just education first, right? Make sure it's the right typology for your project. So that could be early on in development, right? As you start to develop that project, you want, if you're looking at using volumetric modular, you're going to want to make sure it's a good fit for the site. Because it may be not a good fit. There may be overhead power lines, obstructions. So just starting from the beginning, when you have that first capacity study, to see if laying out a project with that particular modular typology is right. And then if it is right, then entitle the project with that particular typology. So you're not having to go back later and make your building taller, right? So you want to make sure that you don't entitle something that is not appropriate for that particular form of construction later on. And so after that education, after making sure we design a project as modular possible, it's just testing out to make sure all the way through the process that it's still a good fit, and bringing on consultants and team members that have that experience, whether it's a contractor, a set crew, talking to factories, and just making sure that everyone is on board with the design and everyone assures that it is an efficient design for that construction, and that it's going to not only meet schedule, but it's going to meet budget, right? And
Right.
that's how we work.
So I mean, and what's great about this is you are not on your first project. You guys have done a bunch of projects, and you have repeat customers coming through. So the process is definitely working on how you do this. Would you say that with AO, is it residential? Is it multifamily, commercial? What would be the split on the work that you guys do? Is it 50-50, 30-30, and 40, or
Yeah, it's mostly probably like 90% is multifamily,
Mhm.
and the majority of that is affordable housing. We do have our commercial practice that does hospitality, has a few hotels, so we got a
Okay.
little bit of hospitality going on, but it's predominantly in the multifamily affordable, and that's kind of where we are right now with the housing crisis in California, right? It
Yeah.
used to be a housing shortage, now they're calling it a crisis, and we need to figure out, and developers need to figure out how to get product to market faster, and this is one of those ways.
Sure, sure. Well, obviously modular construction doesn't always make sense for projects. And I know just from listening to what you were saying, that happens from time to time as well. But when it does, for the owners, developers, builders who don't necessarily want to use offsite construction, like what metrics or case studies do you do, or do you offer or share with them to lead them towards wanting to do modular construction? Like, why should they try it? What do you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, it's if you're looking at just kind of the market, right? I mean, we go through cycles where there's a shortage of contractors, right, in the field, and a shortage of labor. We have to really figure out how to deliver projects through various means and methods, right? And just having that in your arsenal, that you have the ability to pivot to go to factory built construction to deliver the project faster. I think it's worth the exploration and worth educating yourselves on. And yeah, we look at it. I say make it modular possible, and it's easy to demodularize a project than it is to
Yeah.
modularize a project. That if you're not thinking of and designing the project to be modular, you're not going to have a successful project later on, and it's very difficult to pivot. But if you design it to be modular possible, it's a lot easier to pivot later on.
So what kind of tools do you use when you're in the design process to design modular? You know, are you using the digital twin? Are you using BIM, Revit? What do you guys use to make sure you have a successful project?
So we use both. So early on, sometimes designers are working in
Hmm.
AutoCAD, but we quickly will pivot to BIM, and that's what the manufacturers use. So we'll be sharing a model with the manufacturer later on. But you know, it either if it's CAD or Revit, it's really about the disciplined approach to designing the project. Understanding how the buildings go together, how things line up across the corridor, how things
Right.
line up vertically, and so just designing for that method.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And when you work with a client, because you're not the manufacturer, do you need to know what manufacturer you're designing into before you start designing modular?
Good question, Dave.
I've
Actually,
done this once or
yes and
twice.
no. And sometimes what we really appreciate when a developer comes to us and says, "I've talked to this factory and we want to work with them." Right? That's always a good way to start. But we understand modular enough that we kind of know the parameters of volumetric. We understand the parameters of panelization, so we could design it pretty close to what most factories build. But if we're leaning towards a particular factory, we will check in very early when we have that initial design, and it's really important to get their feedback, because if there's any small tweaks we could do to the project to make it just even more efficient for how they build, we're going to want to bake that into the design early on.
Yeah. And the process of the build with the client, is there a handoff at some point, or are you and your team with the client all the way through the construction of this project, through manufacturing all the way through?
Yeah, all the way through. And it does vary with different manufacturers. Some manufacturers will take the state set, with offsite construction here in California, we have a local permit and a state permit for everything that's built in the factory. So some factories will do that in-house, but we will still do QA QC of their documents. And sometimes we will do both sets and be responsible for both permitting. And we will see the project from beginning, from initial design all the way through construction.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's super important, not only for your team and a successful project, but for the client. I'm sure it gives them a heck of a comfort level doing that. So tell me, the relationships you have. I mean, you're working with some of the modular greats out there, Guardian, Nashua builders, right? You're working with Prefab Logic and their design teams and what they have going on. How did that all begin?
Yeah, for me, it really started out just, we had a relationship with a factory here in the Bay Area. Unfortunately, they went out of business. But, as soon as you kind of are known for being able to understand the design process for modular and how to detail it and how to work with factories, it sort of leads to that relationship with other factories. And that kind of led to a relationship with Gurdon, which led to a relationship with Nashua, which led to the relationship with CIMC in China, which led to a relationship with Audible in Idaho. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
just, I think factories kind of, they want to start with someone who gets the process and not have to educate, so it's easier for them to come to someone who they know gets it.
Sure. Now, does AO have any white papers or studies when you're talking to these developers in regards to the cost savings and the speed to market versus traditional site building?
We haven't really put together a lot of documentation, but we can kind of reference some of the projects, and we can put them in touch with other developers who've executed the project, so they could get
Hmm.
feedback. Because I figure that's one of the best ways. We're the architects, right? So we take it from design through construction, but there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, right? So
Yeah.
if you're a developer, you probably want to talk to another developer, right? So we know who the people we've worked with, and they're most likely willing to share some information with other developers.
Sure. What are some of the lessons learned that you've picked up along the way? Going from traditional architecture and then obviously grinding the wheels on offsite construction in general, no matter what its format is. Are there any moments where you were kind of like, well, we won't do that again?
Yes, that's in life. I'd say you kind of learn from mistakes, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to say, early on, um, you know, if you're not coordinating consistently with the contractor, with the factory, and all the people responsible for every detail, you could have mistakes. And that's one of the things I am really adamant about. If you have a detail that is partially built in the factory and needs to be executed in the field, I really want that contractor to understand that detail and look at it, because if there's anything we could do to modify that detail to make it better, faster for them to install in the field, we're going to want to do that, right? Because I have a crane that's very expensive, and if you're slowing the set down, that's not good for schedule. So I learned early on, collaborate. Everyone should have eyes on it, and make sure that everyone has input.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, everybody, if you are just joining us, we are live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. So make sure that you follow us there. And also YouTube. Do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are having some issues with YouTube this week. They said we'll be back up and running by Sunday, it looks like. So if you're not subscribed to our YouTube, or you missed this episode, you can watch it on YouTube as well. Join the others that are finding 10,000 hours a month watching our channel, because there's a lot of lessons learned from great people like Nick and others that have been on the show. So, quarterbacking the process is something we talked about with Susie Hall of the Cornerstone Collective. Not sure if you know her. Someone has to own the process. How does AO own the process to ensure modular success?
Yeah, so it's, as I mentioned, that collaboration is just critical, right? So, we are the conduit to make sure that communication is happening throughout the team, and making sure that we're putting things out there that need to be addressed early on. It's never too late to start coordination with your factory and with your contractor. It's never too early to bring in consultants. If we're looking at a design that may have a structural component to it, we want to talk to the structural engineer and just make sure, hey, is this sufficient for offsite construction, what we're doing? And if it's not, how do we maybe tweak it to make it work better? So yeah, I would say we're just there to start early on, address issues, bring up things that need coordination, and make sure that everything's running smoothly.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to share some of your projects. We're going to share your website here in just a second. I have one quick question I want to put up there from Henry Mickelberg. So you're acting as the architect of record and dictating the QA methodology for the modular providers, is his question. Are you acting as the architect of record and dictating the QA methodology for the modular providers?
So we are the AOR, but the QA method for the modular providers is that's usually happening within their factory, right? So they have their own sort of method. But we do give the factory sort of we have to demonstrate code, right? We have to give them the basis of design, right? We have to demonstrate that we're complying with all the things they need to here in our state. So, but within the factory, they're responsible for their own QA/QC kind of process.
Yeah, for sure. And my guess is it all comes down to the third party as well, the final inspections with the third party. So Nick, does AO actually have their name on the plans when they're actually getting turned into the building department, or is that through just the modular manufacturer and the third party?
So because that's always a tricky one, because if we're doing a state set, we are responsible for the code compliance. So we'll have our information maybe on those front end sheets. But if the factory is using another third party person who is putting their documents together and stamping it, then we obviously will not have our name on it because we're not stamping those documents. But if we are responsible for that permit with the state, we definitely have our name on it. So it's whoever's stamping those documents.
Right, for sure. So why don't we jump into some of your slides here that you want to show, and then we can kind of show some of the projects, because I think people really need to understand. I mean, you guys are doing some amazing projects, and by the way, I did have one question for you when we get to the website about that whole surfing community. I went first dibs on a house there. I can't surf worth a darn, but I'm willing to learn. It was super cool. Which one do you want me to start off with, Nick?
You can start off with Stevens Creek. That's kind of an interesting
Stevens Creek. Is that this one here?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, AO is doing quite a bit of modular. This is an interesting project because it has 3 different typologies on it. On the right side is an affordable housing project with about
Right.
170 units. The two buildings on the upper right and in the middle, those are two market rate projects that have about 400 units in it. And on the bottom left is a hospitality project that has about 250 keys in it. So all modular possible, right? All designed to be modular, but really complicated kind of project that it just has a myriad of typologies in it. So it's kind of where we're going with things these days.
Mm-hmm.
I think there might be another image that just kind of shows a view from inside.
Yep. And where's this project at?
Santa Clara.
Santa Clara. Great. And then next one.
Yeah, that's just a view. That's just a rear view of the project, looking at. You can do things with massing. We're stepping down at the back, so modular doesn't always have to be flat. There are things you could do to kind of create articulation. So just a little example of that.
I mean, it's beautiful for sure.
Yeah. And that's this view from inside. So looking at how there's a lot of things that you have to go on the ground floor. So you usually have a site-built podium, and above is your modular components, right?
Yeah, for sure. Perfect. And then we have this other one here that you added as well. Tell us a little bit about this project.
So nice thing about this project is affordable housing project with Eden Housing in Hayward. So it's mixed with the school. We're not doing the school. The school's on the bottom. But yeah, two buildings, all affordable, 100% affordable, in Hayward, California. So a nice little project for Eden. Most of our work is on the affordable sphere, as I mentioned, but we are doing some market rate, and our projects range from 3-story walk-ups to projects like this, which are probably several hundred units of housing, to the large projects like Stevens Creek. So we're kind of doing things at all scales, which is great.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So a couple more questions here that I want to kind of touch base on a little bit. You mentioned, earlier, and I've mentioned a couple of times that you're working with, Gertie and Nashua, for example. Can you share any insights as to how these manufacturers are the same or are they different? And do you need to adjust your approach at all based on which factory you plan to build with?
Yeah, I'm going to say everyone's a little different. And I mean, they're different from technical aspects, right? Like some factories, Autovol can build a box up to 74 feet.
Right.
Factory OS is 72 feet, and so is Gurdon. Some factories could only build up to 68. So, you have to understand, if you're doing a double loaded corridor, how deep your units could be in your corridor, right? So, they're different from just how they build. But they're also different from the processes they use to, as we've been talking about, their permitting. Some factories will want the architect to do the state set. Some will prefer that they do it. And just the way they collaborate too, is somewhat different. Some will want to take more control over that modular process, and some will prefer that the architect, who's the design architect, will take more responsibility for that coordination. So you kind of have to learn how each factory works and, work with them. But having worked with them all and built projects, I kind of got it down.
Right. Well, the lingo, what to ask, what the general procedures are, shipping, all the other stuff, height requirements, right? And I would imagine, most importantly, you understand the importance of mechanical systems in the pre-design process. Yeah.
The buildings are a little bit different from a mechanical perspective, and they're also different from a structural perspective. So that's one of those pivot points that you have to know. You're typically not getting into DD unless you know the project is going to stay modular, right? And you typically don't want to be in DD unless you have a factory on board, because you want to make sure you're designing to how they build, right? So that's one of those things that owners have a hard time understanding, that they have to pick someone that early on in the process.
Well, I mean, yeah, but it's like, listen, you're not going to change your new car that you had custom designed on the production line either and expect it to work out the same way and the same cost. Are you seeing, let's talk about trends a little bit. Are you seeing any trends where, or are you looking at personally any of the modular designs for MEPs, such as wiring harnesses, for these larger projects, are you looking at using modular MEP, stack systems that are built off-site and able to be lowered into the chases on-site? Are you seeing anything like that?
We haven't seen, contractors kind of go that route with it. We
Mm-hmm.
kind of always design things for a means and methods of construction, right? Even, the modular portion of our drawings is kind of like, the factory will execute it and how they
Right.
build, right? But we have been using like modular elevators, those are things that kind of come in and get dropped in, but we haven't
Sure.
quite seen, that in the mechanical realm yet.
Yeah, well, I know, there's some companies out there starting to work on that. So it'll be interesting to see how it actually can be incorporated in the factory or even on site, for instance, right? If it can reduce some of the time putting those things in.
Yeah, you have riser diagrams that why couldn't someone build those offsite and drop them in, right? It just kind of it makes sense, right?
It does. Yeah, it really does. So, all right, let's talk about trends and growth. Are you seeing growth in the modular builds, or are you seeing more requests for modular and offsite construction? What do you get? What's the feel? What's the vibe on the modular market for you right now?
It's hot. We're at the front lines, right? So the amount of developers who come to us and say, we really need to pivot to modular, and so we're helping them out and we're studying projects for them. And, we have right now 50 projects that are using modular, and all ranges from early design, concept design to, in construction right now. So we've had people come to us with projects that they want to learn how to execute it using modular.
All right. That record scratch. You said you have 50 modular projects in the design phase right now?
We have 50 projects that are they're in the design phase and in construction and being painted right now. So all phases,
Yeah, that's awesome. I am super excited to hear that. That's amazing. Very, 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 very amazing. All right, so you're seeing the growth happen in is it mainly in the multifamily space you're seeing that?
Yeah. Mainly multifamily, and a lot of the people coming to us now. Most of our work has been, in the affordable sphere, but a lot of people in the market rate side are coming to us now, and I think
Yeah.
they're, seeing some of the construction costs going up. They're seeing the labor shortages that were occurring, and just trying to figure out, as I said, people need to have that in their arsenal to just, do a project, learn how modular works, and if it's right for a project, being able to pivot that direction is, I think,
Yeah.
a benefit for developers.
Sure. And let's talk about trends in terms of design, building materials, methods of construction, incorporating different elements like indoor, outdoor, living, mixed use spaces, from home or, build to rent. What are you seeing? Are you seeing a lot of that outdoor living still being a big part of your design? And are you seeing a lot of build to rent happening? And is that part of that 50 plus different projects you're looking at now currently?
Yeah, a lot of build to rent. I want to say that, we haven't really, got out of that COVID thing yet, right? So I think during that, people realized that outdoor space is kind of good for projects, and we're even seeing just some clients looking at the design of units, right? Making sure there's a
Right.
space where someone could set up a desk to do Zoom interviews, right? Or Teams meetings.
Yeah.
So, just from the programming of units to making sure that there's appropriate outdoor space with amenities, and even having, some of the buildings we're doing have like co-working in it, so that people could leave their units and go work but not have to leave the building, right? But
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I've seen some interesting things going on in the amenity sphere on projects.
I love it. I'm still in shock over the 50 units that you guys have. How big is AO?
So we're about 350 people. The multifamily studio is about 150 people, I would say. And,
Hmm.
we have commercial, life science, healthcare, tech. So just a range of things that are going on.
Yeah, you know what? I was just looking at that. So if we look at, if I'm up here and I'm looking at projects, retail, hospitality, restaurant, mixed use, office, industrial, parking, landscape, interiors, global design, sci tech, healthcare, modular, transit oriented and public utilities. So you really are doing quite a bit in this space.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is great is like the project that I showed you, Stevens Creek, right? It has
Yeah,
parking, it has retail,
that's
it
right.
has hospitality. So we have experts all in house that are helping us execute those kind of projects.
Yeah, for sure. And these are a lot of your modular projects here that we're looking at now.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
And
I
yeah,
absolutely think it's amazing.
just a drop in the bucket of what's going on. Yeah.
Just a drop in the bucket. Is that what you just said?
Yeah. I mean, compared to what we have on the boards. Yeah.
Right, right, right. Well, I want this one. Is this going to be modular?
Yeah, Bruce Greenfield, our commercial guy, did this, but no, it's not modular. I don't think yet.
I still
But
think
yeah,
it's
me
super
and you are
cool.
gonna line up for some test runs on those waves, right?
Yeah, yeah. Listen, I think, it's kind of like the golf course. This is a perfect place for a business meeting of some sort, right?
Yep.
I think I love these communities. We were at Tavistock community, Lake Nona in Florida, and it's built similar to this, but with a wakeboarding park in the middle of it.
Okay.
Right. Amongst other things, it has autonomous driving buses on the property and all of that, but kind of that same concept, where it's a lifestyle where you live, which I think super great, super great. So, all right. So we got a bunch of projects going on. You guys have 50 in the works, everything from, retail, mixed use, hospitality, and all of that. Nick, is there anything that I've left out that you think we should be sharing with our audience?
I'd like to reiterate, if you're really considering using, modular offsite construction, educate yourself, watch Dave Cooper live, got a lot of great information here. Go to the World of Modular, go to offsite construction talks. There's a lot of events that happen. Talk to architects like AO that could help educate you, and just do the education first, and then I would say try it out on a project. And it's never too early to start collaborating with architects if you want to do that.
Yeah, you made me think of a question there. Is there a project that's the perfect size, or any projects too small, any projects too big, from what you've seen in your global experience of this?
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to the factory you're working with. Like a Gurdon or a Factory OS is probably not going to do like a 30-unit building, right? But Crate Modular is maybe someone who would, or a Nashua. So there's the right size project for the right size manufacturer. But what I would say is that if there's not enough volume or repetition, if it's too small, then it doesn't really make sense to try to use modular.
For sure. We got Ben Hershey out there. Look at that. Great to be part of the show today. Looking forward to hearing from Nick Gomez. Ben Hershey is Forward Solutions Group, one of our sponsors of today's show. And I don't know if you know Ben or not at AO, but he is one of the big names in offsite construction and helping factories get set up and running, as well as what you're talking about, get people working in the right direction.
Yeah, well, thanks for supporting the show.
Join us. Henry had a follow-up question. Let me get in here. Sorry, that's not the right one. So when do you think that the U.S. will drop the CLS lumber restrictions for timber volumetric and get on board with fully engineered timber modules without the incremental size restrictions?
Yeah, that's a tough one. We've seen people studying those timber modules, but I haven't really seen them used here in the U.S. It's something that, like he's mentioning, you see them in Europe,
right?
But I would definitely would like to see them used here, but I don't know when that's going to happen.
Well, we'll be showcasing a bunch of that because we're going to be in Europe for an entire month, almost a month and a half of July of next year. So I'm sure we'll showcase some more of that as we travel Austria, Italy, Germany, and Switzerland, showcasing modern methods of construction, offsite construction, industrialized construction, whatever we want to call it, Nick. So super cool. Nick, so I guess the biggest advice that you have for everybody is you just got to educate yourself so you understand what Modular is and how it can benefit you, or come to a place like AO Architects to help you understand that education, or to Dave Cooper Live or any of the others that are out there, trade shows that are putting events on. And I think you're right. I think education is key. And I think the more people know about the opportunities that exist within the offsite construction space, and more people that know that AO architecture exists, and that there's really some skilled people out there that have the capabilities of helping them design the project they need to design in the modular or panelized format, is out there. And I think that's the big thing. There's just not enough knowledge of who's who and what's what.
Yeah, and I think it's things like this are kind of helping spread the word, and we're we take part in as many events as we can to help with studies. There's a local affordable housing company out here that's doing a white paper on funding for modular projects with a large bank. Can't really mention it, but it's coming out. I'll make sure I send it your way when it gets published. But there's just more people trying to figure out how to crack the code, right? How to make it easier to do these projects, and kind of bring down the barriers.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I hope whoever's putting the white paper out has experience in doing it and has real solid numbers. I think it makes a big difference when we have those white papers that come out that really speak from experience versus assumption. So cool. Nick, unless I missed something, that's a wrap, man. Thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave. It was great talking with you, man.
Yeah, it was great having you. And for everybody else out there, be sure to join us. That's right, BS Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern, coming up this Friday with Mark Bare Naked Willie and I. It's always a fun show. It's entertaining too. You never know what the Mark Bare Naked Willie is going to say or do or wear on the show. I say that in all good faith. He's a lot of fun. And listen, it's trade show season, everybody. So make sure if you're going to be at IWBCC, the Industrialized Wood-Based Conference, you come and see us. We're going to be out there. We're moderating several panels, and we're introducing some of the keynote speakers. So that's right. Dave Cooper Live will be doing that. And we will also see you at the International Builders Show this year. We got a lot of great things happening. So stay tuned for everything out there. Nick, you have a wonderful rest of your week. Don't go anywhere. I'll come back to you after the outro. And everybody else out there, thank you for tuning in. And again, make sure you like and share these shows. It's the only way we're going to grow and get better. I'm Dave Cooper. We'll see you next time. Bye now. See you, Nick.
Thanks.